I'm sorry, Mantra Rishika, when it can become a real linkage. A rose flower on the hairless of a girl becomes a real linkage with the cup.
Because she touched the rose flower and placed it in her hair with the same fingers that she is holding the cup.
Sir, so you're muted.
Pardon me?
Hmm.
She placed the rose flower on her hair with the same fingers that she is holding the cup.
Yeah, a forensic scientist will find it out, right? A forensic scientist will find it out. That's why I asked you, Andhra Rishika, precisely. And that forensic scientist will identify that this girl has gone to that particular place where the rose flower was there. Of course, why not? Okay, that's good. Any other linkage, any other creative linkage?
A cup so beautiful that it turns into a rose.
Hmm?
A cup which is so beautiful that when touched turns into a rose.
All right. Yeah. A real rose flower. Much more direct, okay?
Can you repeat the question once more, please? What is the
Can
direct?
you can you linkage? That means can you create a linkage? Or can you identify a creative linkage? That means uh, can you linkage ever possible, probable a cup with a rose flower?
The cup can be used as a flower vase to hold the rose flower.
Okay, that is very obvious. Little more remote. It should be remote. Let us say that rose flower comes and meets the cup. It gives a kiss to the cup. If that rose flower is alive, when it meets that cup, it gives a kiss to that cup. Oh,
Both can be used to express love.
mm, yeah, of course. Why not? That means
Though,
love is linked with expression of love. One moment of expression of love of a person with another person is expressed through a rose flower, and then another day expressed through giving a gift of cup. Okay, all right, agreed. But that rose will not kiss the cup. Here, the rose will definitely embrace the cup. That's the kind of linkage.
the rose is
Hmm.
a cup in nature.
Once again, what is that?
The rose is a cup in nature.
Rose in a cup in nature.
Rose is a cup in nature
Which way?
for insects or uh, some other creatures to drink from.
Say a little more, clarify what you have conceptualized. Now it is become a conceptualization exercise for you. How do you logically explain what you said?
Uh, the bees and insects, they drink from the rose, the nectar from the rose, and we drink from the cup. So
Right?
the
They are two different acts you are talking about.
yes,
Two
but
different processes. Okay. In which way, when we talked about interdependence or interlinkaging of all the variants in the universe, still there is a direction. For example, the let's say a shop owner sells a cup, he gets 3 rupees profit from that selling of a given cup. On that day, he had to pay the school fees of the daughter, and that 3 rupees he gives to the daughter. That is a remote tuition school. So that cup and that school itself is linkage in that way. But that school is not directly linkage with the cup maker. There is a linkage, definitely, but it is not a direct linkage. When we talk about network, it should be direct linkage. It is not by direct linkages. It is by one or at least by one or more other linkages. It could be a past linkage, a future linkage, a remote linkage, a direct linkage, indirect linkage, a process linkage, etc.
Sir, both came from the same soil.
Yeah, you're somewhat closer, of course. But a rose plant may not grow in a clay land, but let us say a certain part of the land where the rose was there, when then some river flow happened and some clay got deposited in that place, and the cup was made of that clay. Of course, that's a quite possible linkage. And then the rose flower comes and meets this cup and says, "Oh my God, you are my brother. We are from the same place," and the rose gives a deep kiss on the lips of the cup. Of course, good. Precisely, that was the linkage in my mind. Because that I suppose is the only possible way a rose can give a kiss to the cup.
But there is also another way where if you kiss a rose, and after some time, can you go and drink tea?
But the rose is not kissing the cup, That's a linkage, of course. Amaya is telling that, what is that? You smell a rose and then you just chew a piece of petal of a rose, yeah, that you can do, and then you sip from a cup. But then the rose is not kissing the likelihood of a rose, creatively speaking. That's what they would be doing by the question. Veena Ganesh, the question decides the answer. The question here is, can you conceptualize or can you project any possibility where a rose flower can kiss a cup? That is the question. To that question, what Ashwini made is the most probable answer. Or if you can think of some other possible answer, talk about it. So you got a feel, can you see when you close your eyes, everything is a variant. Every variant has a subvariant structure. Every variant is linkaged with other variants in varied orbits and varied types of linkages. Okay? Can you see all of them in single shot? A single jump of your projection inside, can you project all that? Similarly, then why don't you see every object in your environment at the center of its own invariant, variant orbit linkage network? Not a fiction, but a referent reality. The reality of the referent of a cup we are talking about. Real. But of course, we have gone at this contest creative, imaginary linkages also, like a rose coming and embracing a cup. or rather imaginary linkage or poetic linkage or projected linkage, which is something if you are creative in writing poetry or fiction, you can think about that. All the fiction in the world, they are all the output of such created linkages, so-called linkages conceptualized by the so-called creative and original mind. Now another question. If the rose comes to kiss the what you call, if a rose flower can be actually linkaged, okay, what Ashwati said, the rose may not be kissing the cup, but there can be a rose plant and a rose flower which was direct linkage with the soil from where the what you call the clay has been taken. No doubt about that. If it is so, how do you see the so-called creator? So, do you think there is a creator for this world? A single agent sitting somewhere or being possessed somewhere and have created in the past and then left the scene forever? At least, if there is something like that, it must be existing now also. True?
Yes.
Can anybody in the world deny what I said, what you say?
No.
The creator appeared from nowhere and created all these things and vanished.
No.
It must be there right now also.
Yes. It is there.
And it is absolutely unlikely that it is something located in a secret corner inside a cocoon and staying there watching all this nonsense.
No.
Okay? Now, do you understand the truth that the so-called God, whatever it is, forget that name, that central operating principle is present everywhere?
Yes.
Yeah. And that everywhere includes 100% of the you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
If it is so, why you cannot identify the linkages of that in your consciousness?
Right.
Is it a direct linkage or an indirect linkage?
It's direct.
Very direct. Very,
Very.
very direct.
Huh?
Very, very direct.
Yes.
100% direct linkage.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Then why that 100% direct linkage is not transposed by you? What do you think the nature of that linkage? If it is a direct linkage, what is the nature? Nature meaning what is the characteristic or what is the form of that linkage? Do you think? Or is it an error to conceptualize a God by the available descriptions by some hooligans, I would say, spiritual hooligans, giving unnecessary powers and glorification and deification? Do you think the God is like that? Do you think there is even a single linkage between what the so-called anybody in the world, in the history of the world, talked about the God and the possible reality of it? What is the referent of that God? Is it anyway the reference of the true, whatever, fundamental? "100% all existing concept about God is a created illusion to control the mediocre ordinary people, to give a solace for the ordinary logic of the people who cannot manage the trials and tribulations and sufferings of the suffering of existence."
Right.
But there is everything is alive. Now do you see the referent reality that everything is alive? Can your conscious awareness linkage with the possibility that everything is alive? Can you linkage with everything else if they are all alive? That is it's a particle physics proved it. There is no frozen dead material in the world. Because every particle is alive by its movement from particle form to the wave form. The particle of the air, particle of the nail, particle of the screen of the mobile, particle of steel, particle of diamond, particle of water, particle of air, fire, element, water, all these things are at the particle level are identical. Proved by particle physics. So, can your consciousness linkage with the life or the livingness of every other thing in your environment? Why your consciousness is restricted within the conditioned items in the environment? Your father, your mother, your wife, your husband, your children, your pen, your table, your car, your house. Okay, that's all right. But can you really feel, can you really sense the linkages with every drop of soil where your leg is getting placed? Can your consciousness expand in its energy to feel that? If not, then that is the lacuna, that's the incapacity of your system, that's all. That's the truth. Okay. Your consciousness, is it a variant or invariant?
Variant.
Why? Or how?
Because it is different for different people.
That is the primary orbit statement you should be making. It is varying in you itself. Different focus of consciousness, different levels of consciousness, different speeds of consciousness or different powers of consciousness in the given individual self. If consciousness is a variant, what is the invariant of consciousness? Or consciousness is an invariant, or what, and consciousness is taken as a variant. Of course, it has variation of its power. Because your consciousness is almost dormant when you're asleep. And your consciousness is at much more high speed when you're driving a car in a highway traffic. Your consciousness is in much more high speed when you're writing an important examination. All right? In its power, let us say its power variation is there, or speed variation, let us say so. Other than that, what is varying in consciousness? The focus of consciousness, the contents in the consciousness varies. Right now, you're conscious about your room, or you're conscious about whatever is going on now. So, if the contents are so-called stream of consciousness, continuously varying. So, actually, the real form of consciousness is invariant only. Because its speed variation is there. But consciousness is not conscious about speed variation most of the time. Consciousness is conscious about the contents of consciousness. All right, with one more question, we will stop if you want to. We talked about every cup as a variant. So, you is a variant. What is the invariant in you? The cupness of the cup, like that, the invariant of the you, what is possibly its nature? Do not give an answer. If everything is located, if every variant is located in a linkage network orbit, what about your linkage network orbit? So work it out, create a diagram of your invariant. Forget about your invariant. The other variants. Forget about the zero orbits also. The variants at the first, second, and third level with which you are engaged, which was in the beginning pointed out by Navin. If you are the cup, most wonderful cup, what are your linkages? We talked about most of the linkages of a cup, the past linkages. What about the possible, probable future linkages of a cup?
In number.
Yeah, almost n-dimensional. Anything is possible, right? Yeah.
The same. So imagine how much for us.
Right.
If there are future linkages for a cup, definitely, undoubtedly, what are the future possible probable linkages of the you? If the possible future linkages of a cup owned by you can be under your control, can the future linkages of you, the very you, be under your control? Which way the tossed the coins in I Ching? Which way they shuffled and picked up number of conch shells in the hand of a competent astrologer, engage with the indications, definite indications of the future of the you. or future of a project or a future of an action or whatever. What is the linkage? Thank you. How that shuffling of the three coins in your hand get linkaged with the question. Of course, the resultant hexagram gives a linkage network picture from out of which you choose an answer, a clue to the question. But more important is how the tossed coins or what gets linkaged. The tossed coins get linkaged or the tossing gets linkaged?
The tossing.
Yeah.
Only tossing can linkage because tossing also is a nature process, just as we are.
No, tossing happens because of a nature process, but the extent of tossing, the nature of tossing is, of course, the nature process that operates in the hands of the person.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because he's not deciding that.
And it is linkaged. No, no, but that is true, but it is not directly connected with the nature process. No. Nature process does not determine the number of tossing that you apply to a coin. No.
Ah. But nature process can determine the outcome, no?
No, no, no. Indirectly, you can say, no, in which case everything is a nature process, but the outcome of the head or tail of coins depend more directly or link it there. That is linkaged directly with the way you are tossing the coin. No doubt about that.
No, how can you say that? Because when you're tossing, you're not putting it with the thinking that it should be a head or a tail. That part is beyond your control.
That part is beyond your control.
That
But the
is
way
why I said.
no, no, that is, but it is not 100% nature process determined either.
So what is that outcome? Where does that lie? It's neither with the person
That is
nor
what
the
that's
nature
what I'm
process.
asking. That's my question to you. How this tossing is linkaged
Oh my God.
with the outcome. So, like in the linkage by the linkage theory, that tossing is linkaged with the mindset of the person who is doing also. Nature process is linkaged with every action of everything in the world. For the COVID virus or AK-47 or atom bomb or whatever included. And nature process is operating in the very smartphone. The so-called what you call that chip is made out of pure soil. Just imagine the most advanced thing in the world, the so-called smartphone and computers. That chip, whatever that consists of slices of ordinary soil, silicon. Even an AK-47 works by unique explosive identified out of nature process. The so-called advancement in technology works by simple soil, electrical potentiality, electrical conductivity of the soil. Anyway, that's all different question. So coming back to the points, if the random tossing of the coins can identify the possible probable clues about the future linkages of the you, why you cannot identify that? You meaning I'm not asking any one of you, why the person cannot identify that? Okay, that's a different question. Primary question is, if that operating principle is operating in you, that the God is there, not when you pray and when you sit in meditation, and it's all the time present everywhere, omnipresent and omniscient, why your consciousness cannot locate it? Or is the consciousness itself is an expression of the very thing which you are looking for? If everything is an expression of the nature process, and if the entire variant invariant linkage network is nature process, every expression of you is an expression of the very wonderful ultimate. So apply this variant invariant linkage network framework to understand the fundamentals of existence outside as well as inside. That is your
Yes.
task. And in that process, if you have any questions, you can ask. And every expression, every response, every behavior, every act, every relationship, every piece of thought is intimately as well as infinitely linked with everything else in your surroundings at least. If God is in the details, if the God is so-called, forget the God, I mean that central principle by which everything is going on. That is present everywhere. Why not? Your very consciousness is an expression of that. You think otherwise. As I told you, if there is anything that is not a part of the universe, is your language and language and language only. I mean, the content of the language. The thought process is a reality of the universe of the body. I mean, central nervous system neuronal process. The sounding is a neuronal process. The movement of the vocal cord is a neuronal process. But the structuring of the sounding to which meanings are attributed by the very neuronal process, that creates the problem. That's why the Rishi said the entire world is an illusion.